So we left off on Tuesday. We patched server 3. Most of y'all's finished. Mine took longer than anybody else's. The server 3 is patched. I've got server 3 restarted. So my server 3 is up and running right there. It's running now. And we had a video patching it. And we also downloaded the enterprise deployment of Google Chrome browser. We went in enhanced session mode and copied it to our desktop, and we drug out the installer file, found a 57 meg installer file out of that zip file, put it on our desktop. So our goal today was to set up a deployment share off of server 3 and then go in and configure group policy to set a policy to have Google Chrome deployed out to all the computers or all the client machines in our entire organization, which happens to be a single Windows 10 machine, but could be hundreds or thousands of them. We'll have to imagine that it's a lot more than that. So on my server 1, I'm going to go into Server Manager. I'm going to refresh the screen a couple of times because it's been a day or so before we've messed with Server Manager, and it forgets. It sits there and doesn't do anything for a couple of days, and it forgets who's there and what's going on. Unless I got all these access denied. I just simply refresh it and wait on it. May have to do it more than one time to get all the counters back to normal. Okay, I had to wait a couple of minutes and refresh it a second time, and now it finally, everything shut up. Performance counters working, so you may still be waiting on yours. It's always good to do a refresh, especially if Server Manager's been up on the screen for several days. File and storage services is where we need to go to. And shares is where we need to go to. We've already created shares in the past. So you should have IT in public, or at least something out for server 3. We're going to create a new share and call it app deploy and share it with the $sign. We talked about the $sign allowing for a hidden share. So I'm going to go to new share under my task. We're going to do a quick share. It's the most common type of share you'll ever do. Click on server 3 and our second drive in server 3, because I've hopefully drilled that into your head. You don't share anything on your domain controllers, and on your member servers is what it's called. It's not a domain controller. You always try to put it on a drive that's not your system drive, or Windows and all the drivers and stuff. So that's why we have a second drive, and we're creating a share off of it. The share name, app deploy $sign. While I'm on this dialog box, I'm going to copy the path, the remote path, because I'm going to need that later on. So I'm going to copy it and keep it in my clipboard. That way I won't make a mistake later on when I'm trying to access the share, because it is hidden. And I make typos quite often. It's easier if I copy it. So again, the $sign hides it from normal view on Windows client machines. If I go next, on this screen, I always like to uncheck caching and check encryption. If you have Windows 7 clients, this encryption may not be valid. You may have to leave that unchecked until you get everybody upgraded to Windows 8 or Windows 10. Hopefully not Windows 8. Windows 8 was bad. Hopefully you get your company upgraded to Windows 10, and you can encrypt data flow or patch your Windows 10 to enable this encryption feature. I'll go next. And on permissions, we have to customize permissions. share permissions. Do you remember what share permissions are? I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and freeze my screen up here and let y'all set the share permissions yourself and see if you remember the correct permissions. So there's everyone with change rights. And then when we added in administrators, we had to select a principal name, change the location from the domain to server 3. So once it says server 3 in the location, you can type the word administrators with the S on the end of it, hit OK, give them full control, and then they would show up as on my screen up here, where you see everyone has change, and administrators server 3 has full control. So I have to start giving y'all some in-class practices and stuff, assignments, see if y'all can create shares and know what share permission to set. Like I said, that's the normal share permissions you share on everything. So no matter what somebody says, something needs to be shared at with permission-wise, those are the correct share permissions. You remember we lock everything down on NTFS. I believe even Christian had a presentation over that.
How did you add the administrator?
At the add at the bottom. Okay, so once the share permissions were set correctly, the next step is to go over to the permissions tab. And on this tab, we're wanting this to only be accessible by the administrators and the computer systems in our company. We don't want our regular users to be able to go and install programs on their own. So we want these programs to only be deployed out to specific groups of computers that are in specific organizational units, so to prevent random browsing. Well, one, we hid it so they can't just randomly find it. And the next thing, we're going to disable inheritance. You always do a copy or convert, never do a delete or remove. And we're going to take users away. That would prevent random users from accessing the share. Currently, only administrators now have access. So I'm going to add. I'm going to select a principal. And I found that if I add in domain computers, that it allows any Active Directory domain computer to access the share during startup and install any policies I have defined, but it doesn't allow user accounts. So I'm adding domain computers, and I'm only going to give them read and execute because I don't want the computer to be able to spread a virus if it's infected with a virus. So I'm not going to put write or modify or full control. We'll just leave the read and execute checked. And read and execute is actually, a combination of the other two below it, read and list folder contents. And I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to leave domain computers have read and execute. So only the machine account can access that, and only a domain joined computer can access the shared folder, plus the admins. We are administrators, we got to put files out there. A regular user is not able to do that.
Okay, how did you get the...
What does remove and undo?
It can a blank slate,
Have to restart on.
which would mean even you, the administrator, wouldn't have rights if you clicked remove. You'd have to add yourself rights back in. So share set with everyone change, administrators full. That's 100%, pretty much 99.9% of shares. You would set that. I doubt you'll ever run into a 0.1% or those would not be appropriate. And then these permissions over here. We took every users away and added computers, domain computers. So I'll go ahead and hit OK. I'll hit next, and I'll hit create. So if I was try to view server 3 from File Explorer with whack server 3, I don't see app deploy shared. However, if I paste, you remember we copied that path? If I paste it and have the app deploy with the $sign out there and I hit enter, it actually takes me to that folder. Oops. There we go. I was trying to minimize Server Manager. So I got my app deploy. There's my Google Chrome on my desktop. I'm going to drag it into the app deploy folder. And that's how I got it over onto server 3. Now I can create a policy that tells all my computers to go into this folder and install that program when they start. It's an MSI file, a Windows installer. We'll look at the properties. We'll see that it is a .msi, Microsoft installer package. Those can be deployed. An executable cannot be deployed. It has to be a Microsoft installer file to be able to deploy it out.
Tuesday, where can I find that file?
You actually have to download the Enterprise Google Chrome deployment bundle. So you have to Google search for Enterprise Google Chrome deployment or an MSI Enterprise Google Chrome installer. It'll give you a download for 32-bit, 64-bit, and Mac OS, and we downloaded the 64-bit one. So now that I've got that out on my server 3, I'm going to go and create a group policy. I find that in the Server Manager under my Tools menu, and I have my Group Policy Management tool. I think we've already created a policy for mapping a drive. And I don't know why that tool always opens in the background, but it flashes at you down in your taskbar, so you have to click on it to bring it up. I think all of our computers are in S101. I'm going to go and look at my Active Directory just to be sure where my computer is at. I'm going to open up Active Directory users and computers before I create a policy in the wrong place. So S101, that is correct. That's where my client computer is at. That's where I want Google Chrome to be deployed to. I think everybody, if you followed along from the other, you have an S101 and a computer inside it. If you have a client under computers, there's no way to get the policy to it. You have to create an organizational unit, workstations, or S101 in our case that we've been doing in our lab, and drag client 1 into that organizational unit that has that little extra icon on it. So I need to create a policy inside of Group Policy Management on that organizational unit that my computer is in. So I will right click that organizational unit in the very top option, create a group policy object in this domain, and link it here. I'm going to name this Google Chrome deploy. I think that's a good name for it. It's better than Scooby-Doo was here, because nobody else would know what the heck that was doing. Well, Scooby-Doo was here. Well, what did he do? So, a mystery. So I'm going to hit OK. So we have a blank registry, basically a blank registry file is just created. I'm going to right click and go to Edit, and we're going to fill it out. We're deploying software. So we're deploying it to a computer. And that's the only thing, there was no users in that OU, so I'm only going to mess with computer configuration. I'm going to expand out policies, and I see software settings, and I see software installation. I'm going to expand it out. There are no items to show, but if I right click on it and go to new package, it says, well, what do you want to browse for? I can't deploy something off of C drive. I have to deploy it off of a network share, so I'm going to paste that server 3 app deploy $sign up in the address bar up there and hit enter. And I should see Google Chrome. I've seen a lot of students share something off their C drive and then browse to the C drive and click on it, and then all the apps are erroring out. Can't find C:\app deploy. Like, yes, your client doesn't have that on its local C drive. You have to be passing it the network path, because that's what's sent to the computer, is what's up there in that top bar. So I'm going to click on Google Chrome, click on open, leave it at assigned, and click on OK. Windows will read the MSI file and build the policy so that it will install it silently in the background. So it's now examining the installer and looking, and normally when you install something, it asks you a bunch of questions and tell you to hit next a couple times and accept the license agreement, right? Right now, Windows is examining all of those next clicks and all of the defaults that need to be selected, and it's auto-selecting the license agreement. So now it's popped on the screen. Your source, again, once you've deployed something, your source should always show a server path. It should never show a drive letter path, because your client machine is gonna see this, and if you actually see C: something in there, then that's what the client's going to see, and it's going to look at its local C drive, and that's not where it exists. It exists on a server, on server 3, or whatever app server deployment you've got somewhere. So Google Chrome version 67.198 will be installed on the client computer. Now, client computers only read policies every 3 hours by default, and our class is a lot shorter than 3 hours, and administrators are normally not very patient. So I'm going to close out this group policy, and I'm going to go to server. I'm going to go to my client, and I'm going to speed the process along. I'm going to log into my client as an administrator. So administrator@contoso.com. You have to put the @contoso.com when you log in with an administrator account. Otherwise, it tries to log in locally. I'll put my password in there. And after a short time, you'll get your desktop. And I'm going to launch Windows PowerShell admin, or if it says command prompt, it probably says PowerShell with this version. I got to launch the admin version of it. And I'm going to run a command that, if you talk with any IT tech person that runs around managing an Active Directory domain, they probably know GP update space /force. So if you know anybody that works in IT, ask them, do you know about this command? They're probably, yes. And this is a little cheat. I don't want to wait 3 hours and then restart my computer and hope it read the policy in that 3 hour time frame. this forces it. It says, hey, go out and update the group policy off the servers. So now it's going to contact either server 1 or server 2. It's going to look at the net login folder, or no, it's going to look under sysvol, look under policies, and see if there's any policies that it's supposed to read. And it will. And we know that it read the installation policy because we're getting a question here, hey, there's a policy that requires a restart before it can be processed. That's the software deploy policy we just did. If you don't have a software deploy policy, there's not much of any other policies that would require a restart. They would just read the policy and go on. But now I know that, hey, mine worked. It read the policy. I'm going to hit yes. I'm going to wait for it to restart. Sometimes it takes 2 restarts before it'll actually install Google Chrome. And we can hope that after this first one it will work. But I have seen it where we had to log back in and then tell the computer to restart one more time before it actually did the installation. So I paused the video while it was shutting down, and it's now starting back up. I've got my little spinny wheel to entertain me while the computer starts. Still spinning. It should take a little bit longer than normal to get to the login screen if it's reading the policy correctly and deploying Chrome. And I believe normally by now I should be at the login screen if it was not deploying software. But that's also something else. If you deploy software, your employees might be a little perturbed if it's taking 10-15 minutes for them to get to the login screen in the morning and they come boot up their computer. Like, there's something wrong with my computer, it's slow. Just give it time. It's installing Windows updates. It's Microsoft's problem. Blame it on Microsoft. That's easy to do. Even though you deployed software out to them, you can always blame Microsoft for it, because that is probably 80% of their slowness is patches. So I'm going to pause the video and we're just going to wait until the login screen appears. Okay, I've got the login screen. I'm going to log in back in as administrator since it was the last one there. And the desktop hopefully will come up and show the Chrome was installed. I think it auto puts an icon on the desktop. So mine came up and I do have the Chrome browser on it. And it says sometimes you have to reboot it one more time. You might do the GP update /force one more time if it did not appear on your desktop, and let it reboot. And Google Chrome should be on your desktop. If it doesn't come up on the second time you do it, you may have to look at your group policy settings and your security on your shared folder. So without the user having to do anything, they have Google Chrome on their computer. We don't have internet in our situation, but we didn't really care. We just wanted the cool thing of your boss says, I need to install Google Chrome on all 500 computers. It needs to be done by tomorrow morning. And you're like, I can do that. And I don't even have to stay here all night. You could even probably write a PowerShell script and invoke the GP update /force and run it on all the machines, and then you can send an email to everybody about an hour later and go, hey, restart your computers. You should have Google Chrome installed. Okay, well, we deployed our Google Chrome. We had to create a shared folder. We made it a hidden share, so you've learned about hidden shares. We dealt with our share permissions again, our NTFS permissions, and using group policy to push it out. And they're also giving free flu shots until 2 o'clock today. So the nurse is really good. Didn't feel her stick me. I felt like a little bit of burning as she was getting to the end because you could feel the medicine going in, but that's about it. It wasn't painful at all. She was really good. One of the least painful flu shots. I've only had one other nurse give me a shot better than what she had done. And that was yesterday. Y'all go over there today. It's probably a mean person that is going to like jab you really hard and it's going to be really painful. No. So they're free right now. I had one student said they're going to wait a little bit later because, yeah, flu shots only last about 6 months, their potency. So they're going to wait into November around Thanksgiving so the maximum protection will be hitting around January, February, and the flu normally spikes up. But sometimes it spikes up in November. That's why there's, you're kind of gambling right now, but it's always a gamble. You could get the flu shot that's not effective during the year. But yeah, that's free right now at the student.